Abandoned in isolation, picture being completely cut off from the world, marooned on a remote island with no one to talk to, only the haunting echoes of the jungle and the never-ending pounding of waves on the shore. For more than 4 long years, one man endured this horrifying ordeal. This is the harrowing and factual tale of a real-life castaway whose extraordinary struggle to survive against all odds will make you reconsider the true extent of human endurance. Welcome to Into the Deep, the channel where we explore some of the most baffling and bone-chilling stories from the past. Today, we journey into the haunting account of one man's isolation on a barren island, a true life saga that later inspired one of the most iconic adventure stories ever written. Alexander Selkirk, born in 1676 in the quiet Scottish hamlet of Lower Largo, seemed destined for a life filled with both excitement and danger. As a youth, his defiant nature often got him into trouble, but it was his passion for the sea that eventually set him on a fateful path, one that would alter the course of his life forever. In 1703, Selkirk took to the seas as a buccaneer. He became part of an expedition led by the English privateer William Dampier, departing from Ireland under official authorization to seize enemy ships during the War of the Spanish Succession. Dampier captained the St. George, while Selkirk sailed aboard the Cinque Ports, commanded by Captain Thomas Stradling. After enduring a perilous voyage around the treacherous waters of Cape Horn, the fleet engaged a French warship which managed to escape and warn Spanish forces. Following a failed attempt to raid Panama, the crew managed to seize a well-supplied merchant vessel, briefly reigniting their spirits. Selkirk was appointed as commander of this captured ship, but Dampier soon let it go after taking essential supplies like wine, flour, sugar, and brandy. By May 1704, Captain Stradling and the Cinque Ports chose to split from Dampier's command, setting the scene for the dramatic twist in Selkirk's fate. In September of the same year, the Cinque Ports reached the deserted island of Mazatira, part of the Juan Fernandez Islands, for fresh water. During the voyage, Selkirk had grown increasingly worried about the vessel's condition and had frequent disputes with Captain Stradling. Fearing for his safety if the journey continued on the weakened ship, Selkirk made a daring and drastic choice. He announced he would rather remain on the island than sail further under Stradling's command. Unbeknownst to him, this choice would swap one form of peril for another. Stradling accepted the request without hesitation, leaving Selkirk alone on the isolated island. Almost instantly regretting his demand, Selkirk begged to return to the ship. But Captain Stradling, eager to make an example of him for the rest of the crew, coldly denied his request. Exiled in the wild. When the Cinque Ports vanished beyond the horizon, it was as though Selkirk had been handed a slow and certain death. With the ship gone, he stood in stunned silence, realizing the brutal truth of his fate: utter isolation, with no human contact for hundreds of miles and only a handful of belongings to survive. Among them, a musket, a worn-out hatchet, a pot for cooking, a blade, carpentry tools, his Bible, some clothes, and bedding. The island itself was raw, rugged, and alive with unfamiliar sounds that echoed after dark. His first few days were marked by deep fear and the unease of complete uncertainty. Selkirk had no choice but to swiftly adapt to this harsh new reality. His first priorities were basic: find food and shelter. He eventually took refuge in a cave near the beach and lived off whatever the wild offered. Grief, isolation, and overwhelming sorrow consumed him. For hours, even days, he would gaze at the endless ocean, often admitting later that he seriously thought about ending his life. But his paralysis turned to action when an unexpected force of nature intervened. As mating season began, huge, aggressive sea lions swarmed the beach. They overran the area, cutting off his access to the ocean and forcing him to move deeper into the island. Though Selkirk initially dreaded entering the wild, unknown jungle, this forced relocation turned out to be a life-saving shift. Not far inland, he discovered a fertile valley teeming with cabbage palms, wild turnips, and local fruits, all of which became a vital part of his diet. Even more remarkably, he found feral goats that had been left behind by earlier pirate expeditions. At first, he hunted them using his firearm, but when his gunpowder ran out, he began chasing them down by foot and constructing makeshift traps. Over time, he managed to tame some of the goats, using them for both meat and milk. During one of these hunts, Alexander had a near-fatal accident. While pursuing a goat, he lost his balance and fell off a steep cliff, landing in excruciating pain. Immobilized for several days, he lay helpless at the base of the cliff. Ironically, it was the goat he'd been chasing that may have saved his life. Its body softened his fall. Without it, he likely wouldn't have survived. But cliffs and falls weren't the only threats. The island was infested with rats the size of his forearm. At night, they gnawed at his hands and feet, posing a constant threat of infection and deadly disease. In a stroke of ingenuity, Selkirk tamed wild cats that also roamed the island. These felines became his guardians, keeping the rats at bay and forming an unusual, yet comforting companionship. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Selkirk's life on the island began to take shape. Though there was no sign of help, he never surrendered hope. Every day, he climbed a lookout point to scan the sea, lighting signal fires whenever possible. By October 1704, he had moved further inland, building more permanent shelters near a freshwater stream. Using the few tools he had, he constructed huts from pimento wood and thatched the roofs with grass. Inside, the furnishings were basic, but goat hides provided warmth and a touch of comfort. He cooked meat in a kettle, sparked fires with pimento wood, and continued to depend on goats and cats for food and safety. He also enhanced his meals with seafood like lobsters and wild plants like parsley, watercress, and parsnips. Yet, it was his Bible that became his greatest source of strength. Reading from it daily helped him preserve his ability to speak and maintain his sanity in solitude. Then one day, a glimmer of hope appeared. 2 ships were anchored just offshore. Bursting with excitement, he rushed to the beach, believing rescue had finally come. But that hope quickly turned to horror. The ships were Spanish. If caught, he would likely face gruesome torture or be enslaved in a salt mine, fates worse than death. Realizing the danger, he retreated deep into the jungle. The Spanish sailors came ashore, combing the island for supplies. Eventually, a group of them spotted him and opened fire. Relying on the agility he had developed over months of navigating the island, Selkirk scrambled up a tall, leafy tree, hiding among the branches. In an ironic twist, the men even relieved themselves at the base of the tree, completely unaware that their target was just above them. Fortunately, they failed to notice him and, after giving up the search, returned to their vessel. The lone survivors returned. As the long, grueling years dragged on, Selkirk's gear and garments began to deteriorate. When his knife finally gave out, he ingeniously crafted replacements using an iron barrel he stumbled upon along the shore. His wardrobe, rough but functional, was fashioned from goat hides, and his feet grew tough from countless treks across the island's jagged, volcanic landscape. His thick, untamed beard gave him the appearance of a wild creature, almost like a shaggy beast. Even after years of solitude, Selkirk never lost faith that he would one day be rescued. What he didn't know was that his fate was quietly shifting. William Dampier, the very man who had unintentionally abandoned him years earlier, was now heading a fresh expedition along the South American coastline. His new operation, consisting of 2 ships, the Duke and her companion vessel, the Duchess, departed England on September 1, 1709. By late January 1710, the fleet was nearing the island of Mos Etira. After 4.5 years alone, Selkirk was about to encounter a familiar face. Following his frightening run-in with the Spanish, he had become extremely vigilant, constantly scanning the horizon from his lookout before daring to approach the shore. On February 1, 1710, he spotted two vessels in the distance. By their sails and rigging, they appeared unmistakably British. With his heart pounding, he sprinted to the beach, ignited a signal fire, and waved feverishly to catch their attention. Dampier, spotting the unusual smoke, dispatched a small boat to investigate, completely unaware that Selkirk was still alive. The landing party, headed by Thomas Dover, was met by a speechless Selkirk, overwhelmed by emotion after 4 years and 4 months in isolation. Woodes Rogers, captain of the Duke, jokingly referred to Selkirk as the governor of the island. Now lean, rugged, and athletic, Selkirk hunted goats regularly and even assisted in nursing Rogers' crew back to health, many of whom were suffering from scurvy. Captain Rogers was stunned by Selkirk's robust physical condition and calm state of mind. He remarked that one might conclude solitude and disconnection from society is not as unbearable as many believe, especially when someone is genuinely forced into it, as Selkirk had been. Deeply impressed by his survival and spirit, Rogers appointed Selkirk as the Duke's second mate. Once back on the open sea, Selkirk's passion for privateering reignited. At Guayaquil, in present-day Ecuador, he led a bold assault up the Guayas River, seizing gold and gems from wealthy Spanish women who had tried to flee with their riches. His daring continued as they made their way along the Mexican coast. Selkirk helped seize a valuable Spanish galleon and played a significant role in capturing a key prize ship. After that, he served as the sailing master under Captain Dover, guiding the crew through the East Indies and eventually completing a full journey around the globe. On October 1, 1711, Selkirk finally set foot back on English soil, having been gone for 8 astonishing years. His incredible saga of endurance, strength, and resourcefulness instantly captured the nation's imagination. He returned a transformed individual, his tale stirring the hearts of all who heard it. His extraordinary survival story would go on to inspire Daniel Defoe's famed novel Robinson Crusoe. Selkirk's ordeal stands as a shining testament to the indomitable strength of the human soul, proof that even in the bleakest, most overwhelming circumstances, the will to survive and adapt can prevail. In a tribute to his legendary resilience, the Chilean government in 1966 officially renamed Isla Más Afuera to Alejandro Selkirk Island, a fitting honor for the man whose legacy of survival continues to fascinate and motivate generations. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into an incredible piece of history. If you enjoyed this tale, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more hauntingly true stories from the past. Until next time, take care and stay curious.